in a land nestled between the quiet breath of ancient hills and the deep echo of forested mountains, where wildflowers bloomed under silver skies and brooks whispered stories to the stones, there lived a shepherd named Elias. His cottage stood alone at the edge of a vast open meadow, its stone walls weathered by years of sun, wind, and snow. Life here was not glamorous, nor filled with the buzz of civilization, but it was steady, honest, and free. Elias, a man of middle age and quiet thoughts, lived with a dog named Arlo and a flock of sheep that numbered just over 50. He had no wife, no children, and rarely entertained visitors. His days began with the sun and ended with the stars, and he found comfort in the simplicity of his routines. Each morning, Elias would take his sheep out into the fields that rolled gently toward the forest. He carried a wooden crook, worn smooth by time, and watched over the flock with the attentive eyes of someone who understood the value of every life under his care. Arlo, ever alert and loyal, darted about to keep the straying lambs in line, while the older sheep chewed contentedly, already familiar with the land. Elias walked behind them, often in silence, his thoughts drifting like the clouds overhead, but beyond the serenity of the meadow, the forest told a different story. It was a dense, dark world untouched by men for many years, except in the form of cautionary tales told at night around fires. In that forest lived creatures both graceful and terrible, boars that rooted through the underbrush, deer that leapt like shadows, and wolves that moved with ghost-like silence. Among these, one wolf was unlike the rest. His fur was silver-gray, and his eyes held a light not of hunger alone, but of thought. He had survived many seasons, seen the deaths of kin, endured hunger and the fury of men. His name was Varek, known only by legend to those who feared him. In truth, no man had ever truly seen him and lived to tell the full tale. Varek was not a mindless killer. He had learned patience and restraint, skills that allowed him to live long in a world where men grew sharper in their defenses with each attack. While younger wolves would lunge blindly at pens and perish in snares, Varek observed. He watched the shepherds from afar, memorizing their paths, their weaknesses, their tools. But when he came across Elias and his flock, something changed. He found no gaps, no lapses in care. The dog was alert, the man steady. And yet there was something in the man's gaze that did not scream fear or threat. There was a calmness in Elias's posture, a stillness that mirrored the wolf's own nature. At first, Varek kept to the shadows. He would watch from the forest edge, unseen but curious. Elias, though unaware at first, began to feel the presence of eyes on him. At night he would glance toward the trees as if expecting movement. One morning, as the sky blushed with dawn and mist lay thick upon the earth, Elias finally saw him. The wolf stood on the hill crest, outlined in pale gold, still and proud, watching the shepherd and his flock with a gaze that was eerily human. Arlo growled softly, his hackles raised, but Elias did not reach for a weapon. Instead he stood, meeting the wolf's stare. They remained like that for several minutes, two solitary beings, one wild and one human, bound by an unspoken awareness. Then, without a sound, the wolf turned and vanished into the trees. In the days that followed, the wolf returned. Never too close, always from a distance, always at dawn or dusk, he would appear on the hill or by the edge of the woods. Elias, intrigued and moved by the creature's presence, began to leave small pieces of meat on a flat stone near the clearing. He said nothing of it to the villagers, who would have surely mocked or warned him, but each time the offering was taken, no sheep were harmed, no signs of violence. Only the soft, heavy tracks of a beast who had learned trust more slowly than most. Over time, Elias began to speak aloud when alone. Not to himself, but to the space where he knew the wolf watched. He spoke of the weather, the health of the sheep, the dreams he'd had the night before. Sometimes he would laugh quietly, as if telling a story to an old friend. The wolf, though, never responding in kind, lingered more often. He would sit on the ridge for hours, simply watching, sharing in the shepherd's silence. But the world beyond their valley was not so understanding. One bitter night, howls echoed from across the valley, another flock, owned by a reckless young herder, had been ravaged. Blood stained the snow, lambs taken, tracks led to the forest. The villagers cried out for justice, for vengeance, and once again the name of the gray Wolf was whispered with fear and hatred. Elias listened but said little. In his heart he could not believe it had been Varek. The attack was savage, desperate, not the work of the careful watcher he had come to know. He suspected rogue wolves, perhaps even one banished from Varek's own pack, but suspicion held no weight among frightened men. Traps were set, poisoned bait laid, and a hunting party planned, though terrified that Varek would fall victim to their fury. Elias set out alone that night into the woods. He called softly through the trees, hoping the Wolf would hear and understand. Deep within the forest, he found the gray one near a narrow stream. Varek looked worn, his eyes tired but uninjured. Elias approached slowly, laying no bait, making no threats. He simply sat on a fallen log and spoke, his voice low and steady, warning the Wolf of what lay beyond the trees. The Wolf stood still, listening not as an animal, but as something older than the woods themselves. Then, as if understanding, he turned and disappeared into the night. The months that followed were quieter. The traps caught nothing. The sightings ceased. The villagers moved on to other worries, but Elias continued to wait, to leave food, to speak into the wind. And then, on a spring morning, when the world smelled of blossoms and the sky was clear as glass, Varek returned. He was thinner but strong, his coat gleaming. He stood once more at the ridge, watching, and Elias lifted his hand in greeting. Years passed in this strange dance. Man and beast, always near but never touching, bound by an invisible thread spun from mutual respect. As Elias aged, his steps grew slower, his hair whiter. His dog passed, and he did not replace him. His flock shrank. Still, he remained. One winter, when the snow was deeper than any in memory, and the wind howled like the old gods themselves. The villagers came looking for Elias. They found him beneath his favorite tree, wrapped in his heavy cloak, his face peaceful and turned toward the woods. His staff lay beside him, and a small bundle of bread and meat rested near his hand, as if he had been waiting to share it one final time. What puzzled them most were the tracks. Great wolf prints circled the shepherd, not once but many times. And then they vanished into the forest, heading nowhere and everywhere. They buried Elias beside that tree. And though no one admitted it aloud, each of the men who stood at his grave felt the weight of unseen eyes watching from the trees. The legend of Elias and the Grey One endured for generations. Some said the Wolf had protected the flock after the shepherd passed. Others claimed he died beside the grave in silence. And some, more poetic, believed that Elias and Varek were never meant to be man and beast, but two spirits sharing a brief lifetime in different forms, drawn together by solitude, kept together by loyalty, and remembered forever because they chose understanding when the world demanded fear.